Hey everyone, I'm Kevin with Victory 4x4. In this video, we're going to install our strike rear bumper on this 2024 Chevy Colorado ZR2. Now as you get started, obviously the factory bumper along with this factory hitch assembly need to be removed. So we'll get this thing up a little further in the air and kind of show you what's going on from underneath. So underneath the truck, the first thing you'll actually want to do is get your factory spare tire kit and drop your spare tire out of the way, just to give you all the room and access you need underneath here. Mainly to get to the wiring connectors that you see over here, because these all need to be disconnected to safely remove this bumper. So they all kind of have a red locking tab. They're all going to vary just a little bit in the way they function, but for the most part, you'll just take a flat screwdriver on this gray plug, for example. You'll get it in between here and kind of press that back or down in this orientation. That should allow you to press the gray center tab and separate the plug there. On this smaller one, you'll actually be pushing this up in this orientation. Be gentle with this one, as it is just a little bit smaller and therefore kind of more fragile. You should then be able to press in and separate that plug. Now moving back here to your trailer plug, this one actually has a gray locking tab, but still a locking tab. This one you'll pull straight back, and then you can press in and pull back on the connector to get it unplugged. With it unplugged there, you can get a better look at that locking tab, and again, kind of how it operates. From there, you do want to get this harness disconnected from the bumper. It just has a plastic kind of Christmas tree style clip up here. So I just have a clip and panel tool to get in behind there. And that should let me pry down and pop that clip free, kind of leaving this just attached to the frame over here on the side. Then moving in toward the center, you've got two more connections right here you need to unplug. This is basically just behind your license plate mount from the outside. These you can disconnect from the bumper right here, since they'll have to be removed later on. And that'll kind of give you easier access to the plugs right there. And then kind of just like before, release those locking tabs and then press on the center tab to get them disconnected. From there, you'll be removing this spare tire support bracket. So it's just held in with two bolts here, and to get those out of the way, you'll need a 15mm socket. Of course, make sure you're supporting the bracket when you pull that final bolt. And then this will not be reused. Now from here, the only thing holding the bumper and the hitch assembly to the truck is 8 main mounting fasteners. So you have 4 per side, 2 up here on the side, as well as 2 down here on the bottom, kind of running straight up into the frame. So what we're gonna do is remove 3 from each side, leaving the whole bumper assembly to hang on this bolt, again on each side. So 2 final fasteners. We'll then support it with a jack and kind of slowly remove those and get it dropped down. To remove these fasteners, you're gonna need a 21mm socket. So again, I have this supported kind of off camera, which you'll see in just a moment. And now I'm gonna loosen and then remove these final 2 bolts. About right here, we're just gonna kind of double check that everything looks nice and supported. We've got all our wires disconnected, and then we'll take these all the way out and get this lowered down away from the truck. So in our case, doing this on a hoist, we've got this clamp to our jack, so it should be nice and secure here. If you're doing this on the ground, in your garage, in your driveway, whatever the case may be, you could use a floor jack in a similar fashion, a couple jack stands, or even just the help of a friend during this last step to get the bumper down and away from the truck safely. So from here, we'll just drop it down, kind of a little bit at a time, making sure we're not running it into any of the painted surfaces on the truck. We'll always be sure to come back in underneath and just double check all our wiring and make sure nothing's hanging up in there. And then we'll get this out on a bench so we can get some things disassembled here. With this now removed from the truck, we've just got it out here on our cart so that we can work with it a little bit easier. You're going to be removing the factory wire harness as well as license plate lights, the backup or proximity sensors, as well as your outside blind spot monitors. So for that, you pretty much just need your clip and panel removal tool along with a 7mm socket or wrench. You may need a couple extensions and things along the way to get into the spots you need to access some of that hardware. So to start out, just to kind of gain some slack in your harness, you can start by removing any of the clips holding this harness to the bumper with your panel tool. Now really at any point during this disassembly, you can remove your trailer plug. We will want to salvage this and reinstall it with the new bumper. This just has 2 metal clips, so one on each side that you'll press in, which should allow you to kind of pop this down and out of the bumper. Admittedly, they are pretty stiff, so you may need a pair of pliers here or possibly even just a screwdriver to press on that. So we're now going to remove this proximity sensor. There are 4 in the bumper. We're just going to show you one since they all remove in the same fashion. So I do have one hand outside underneath the bumper right now, pressing gently in on this sensor, and then using my screwdriver or really any pry tool, you can pull out on the locking tabs. There's one on the top and one on the bottom that need to be released, and then this should pop in relatively easily, and you can then repeat that process on the remaining 3 sensors. Then to remove your license plate lights, this is where you'll need to first grab your 7mm socket. It's just got one screw down here on the bottom. We're going to kind of reach in under the hitch to access that and get it removed. And then from there, you should be able to just pull out on the bottom and slide down to release that top locking tab. With both lights out of the way, you can now come out to the corners and remove the blind spot monitors. Again, with your 7mm socket, you've got 2 screws up top here that we'll first remove. With both lights removed, you can then come out to the corners and remove your blind spot monitors. For this, you still want your 7mm socket, and then you've got 2 screws up here that you'll first remove. From there, you should just be able to pull gently back and up to release the lower locating tab and kind of free up the entire sensor. Once you flip that around, you can take your 7mm and remove the one screw that you can see out here on the side. And that should allow you to then lift the sensor out of this retainer and cover assembly. From here, the entire sensor harness should be freed up from the bumper. If not, if you feel anything still tight, you probably have a clip or something kind of caught up. Just make sure to check that. Don't pull on anything hard as you're getting it out. You can then just pay attention to the driver and passenger side so that you can install this properly into your new bumper. With your old bumper out of the way, you can grab your new bumper along with all of the provided mounting brackets and mounting hardware. You'll take your harness at this point, which will need to be kind of stripped down. So we're going to remove the proximity sensors, the license plate lights, as well as the blind spot monitors so that we can properly get this routed into the bumper here. So starting with our blind spot monitor, just like most of our plugs to this point, it has a red locking tab that needs to be pulled out, and you can then press in on the center here. You may have to kind of press the 2 together to help that release, and then pull back to get it unplugged. As for the sensors, they may actually fit through some of the routing holes, so we're going to leave them for now, but just so you can see it, they have a similar red locking tab as well. If you have to get these removed, it's a very similar process. When it comes to your factory license plate lights, you can actually just rotate these. It's kind of like a quarter turn locking setup there, and that allows you to separate the 2 and just set these off to the side for now. While you're working with these, just keep in mind that you now have the exposed incandescent light bulb there. You don't want to damage that, so take whatever precaution you see fit there when you're getting this routed through your bumper. Just so that we don't have to even worry or consider mixing up any of our sensors or components there, we're just kind of working one side of this at a time. The kind of tightest spot that you have to feed this through is right here in the center, as it has to kind of pass up and over this hitch tube in behind this bracket where you obviously can't see right now. So we're going to start there and feed it out toward the side. So as we feed these through, we're just going to kind of push one connector through at a time to make the best use of our space here until we get basically half of the harness fed through. From there, you can feed the outside proximity sensor as well as the plug for that blind spot monitor the rest of the way through, kind of in this outside mounting location and all the way out to the outside corner of the bumper, and then repeat that process for the other side. Now during this next step, you're going to notice the bumper appearance is just a little bit different than what you've seen to this point. So what I have here is the most up-to-date version of this bumper. This is what you should expect to receive with your order. And as always, you can check out the photos on our website for the most up-to-date look at this product. With that being said, the only difference in install and why we're here filming this step is going to be the small bracket I have here, which is going to mount your blind spot monitor out on each corner. So that's what you're going to see us install now. So what I have here is the left-hand or driver's side bracket. So keep that in mind. You will have a second passenger side bracket that will essentially be the mirror image of this part. So with that, you'll take the left side sensor, you're going to slide that into the bracket like so and lock the two tabs on the sensor into the two slotted tabs on the bracket. Basically, you're just going to press that all the way in until it stops. And then out on the other end, you'll find the two black nylon washers that you can slip through here, and the small stainless number 10 button head screw that will pass all the way up through here and then get a flanged nut on the sensor side. From here, you'll just grab an 1/8 inch hex to tighten this up. And then this is prepped and ready to be installed in the bumper. Just before the sensor goes in, you will want to install the outer plastic cover. Pay attention to these because there is one side that's going to appear a little nicer than the other just due to the cutting process of those. So keep the nicer side out for the best appearance there. Before I put that in, I'll just point out the orientation of this sensor in the bracket when installed, just so you can get a look at it without that cover in place. So basically it's going to slide in behind here, and it's got two bolts that go through the bottom flange into a tab there, holding it in place with these sensors kind of out and toward the front of the vehicle, or the plug rather, if you will. As for the hole cover, these are just going to slide in from the back side. You'll line up the 4 holes, and then you're going to find 4 of the black 1/4 20 button heads with flange nuts to install into these 4 hole locations. And with all 4 of those started, they'll just be tightened up with a 5/32 hex. So viewing this now from the other side of the bumper, you'll next want to find your harness plug for this sensor and get it clipped back in. With ours, I did have to add a little bit of pressure to the black locking tab here before I was able to snap the red tab back into position. So keep that in mind. You may or may not have to. Ours have likely been unplugged a few more times than yours. From there, you'll find 2 more of those black 1/4 20 button heads. You can slide the sensor and bracket down in here and drop 2 bolts down in from the top into these slotted holes on the bumper, and then install the 2 locking nuts on the bottom. And these, once again, will require a 5/32 hex. And from here, you can just go repeat that installation process on the other side. When you're installing the remaining accessories here on the inside of the bumper, you may find that the harness becomes quite tight when you go to pull the license plate lights specifically out to their mounting locations. Not to worry there, you can pretty easily generate some extra slack in this harness. If you just have a razor knife handy, you can kind of gently come in here and score both the electrical tape as well as the textured harness tape here, possibly even the loom if necessary, allowing you to dissect it somewhat like we have here. This will allow you to pull some extra slack on this license plate harness specifically,
giving you a couple extra inches of wire there, and then you can just come back in and neatly tape all this back up, leaving you with a nice factory looking harness. You will find a similar situation over here on the opposite side of the harness. So typically these would have been routed together all the way up into this location. So once again, you pull that back and you generate quite a bit of slack here. And then following that up, you can wrap this back in the factory loom once again and retape all of this to tidy things up.
Then moving on to those proximity sensors, we provide you a rubber grommet that you'll install into each of these round sensor holes. So we'll just kind of start one side of that and work all the way around to get that in. With the grommet in place, you may have to kind of support it from the outside, and then you can press the sensor in. Basically just start on one side and kind of walk it into the hole, working your way around until you can basically press it all the way in tight to the back side of that grommet, and that will retain those over time. You can then repeat that process on the remaining 3 sensors. Now this is a great time to get your pod lights installed as well. So obviously we give you a light cutout in the bumper here, as well as a nice slotted mounting location on the inside. You'll typically reach in from back here to get these bolted into place, and then obviously you can follow your specific light manufacturer's mounting and wiring instructions to get those finished up. From there, you can kind of repeat this entire process over on the other side, and then we'll get our license plate lights installed. We can now install our license plate light housings into the provided brackets. So for this, you have a locating tab at the top. You can first slide that in, and then the housing should kind of nest down in and sit tight on the bracket there. So this one is going to be the left or driver's side. And then you'll install one of these shorter number 10 button heads from your bolt pack along with a nut there. From there, again, it's your 1/8 inch hex to tighten that up. And then we'll find some 1/4 inch hardware to install this down here on the bumper. So that hardware is more of the black 1/4 20 button head bolts along with serrated flange nuts. This will kind of install in this orientation, but again on the inside of this bumper face. So I'll reach in behind here and kind of get that lined up. I can then install the button head bolts through both holes, kind of locating the bracket and holding those in place, thread the nuts on from the inside. Again, you can use your 5/32 hex for this 1/4 inch hardware, and then we'll reach in behind and click the light back into that light housing. Now, if you're going to be relocating your spare tire out to a Victory Adventure Carrier, which you should be if you're buying this bumper, you're going to be installing latch catches that I have here, as well as pin tracks out on each corner of the bumper. We give you the most in-depth look at how to get these installed in both the individual latch catch video as well as the Adventure Carrier installation video. So check those out to get a more in-depth look at the hardware that you use to install these, as well as how to get all of your carrier accessories installed and bolted in place. Now, if you're adding Adventure Carriers later on, don't worry, you should still be able to access all the mounting hardware and mounting locations to get this stuff installed. Again, it's just easier now, obviously, while you have full access to the inside and backside of this bumper. From here, you're still gonna have the trailer plug mounting bracket, which we're just gonna set off to the side. This will pretty much be the last thing that we put on this bumper. And then you're also still gonna notice that you have a guide tube, kind of support bracket, if you will, for that spare tire tooling guide tube, which we'll show you in a little more detail up on the truck. Now, I will reiterate, those of you moving your spare tire up to an Adventure Carrier don't even have to install this bracket. You can actually remove this tube as well as the spare tire mount completely if you want to, or you can just kind of tighten it up in here like we have ours at the moment. If you want to remove it, it's just 3 bolts kind of running vertically up into the frame cross member. Those can be removed with a 15 mil socket, and then it's just a couple tabs holding this plastic tube in place. But in order to show you how this goes on, I've already kind of lubed up the grommet that we install into here. This is another one of those sensor grommets. So again, you kind of know how to get those installed already. I put a little bit of lubricant on this to help it go onto the tube. And then you can just kind of walk it on there and slide it back in out of the way. And then we'll just leave that kind of hanging until we get the bumper up into place, and that will bolt in using the passenger side license plate light hardware. Now from here, we're gonna get our bumper on our transmission jack, kind of in the opposite way of which we removed the factory bumper, and then we'll lift it up into position on the frame and we can start installing some hardware. As you're getting your bumper into position, you'll want to have your factory mounting hardware handy. That's what you're gonna use to install this new bumper up on the truck. And then from there, you wanna just take all the time you need to make sure that you're not running this into any painted surface on the truck. Maybe grab a couple friends so that they can watch the sides while you get this lifted into place. Whatever you see fit there so that you get yours installed without any damage whatsoever. From there, it's just a matter of carefully lifting this into position and lining it up on the frame. Once you have all your mounting hardware started, you can come in again with your 21 and tighten things up. Just before you do that, go ahead and take a look, kind of step back and take a look at the truck. You do have a little bit of kind of side to side as well as front to rear adjustment in here, so adjust that minorly as needed and then tighten these up. You can now start tightening things up under the truck. So we're going to start by reconnecting the wire harness over here on the frame. Again, we're just going to let this hang for now until we get that trailer plug bolted on down here in just a moment. So we'll move over here toward the center behind the hitch. Over here we have 2 more connectors to plug back in. And then you can kind of see we chose to route our harness up over the top of the hitch receiver tube in here. That's kind of the cleanest way to do this. And then we will come back and zip tie up any slack kind of around the tube here just to keep things nice and clean and tucked in. Here you can see that we now slid this bracket back and got it bolted in with the license plate light mounting hardware in here. Just keep in mind that you want this over top of the license plate light bracket in the way you're viewing it here so that this light stays in nice and tight to the bumper there. From there, you can reconnect these lights if you haven't done so already by just installing them and again quarter turning to lock them. You can now grab that trailer plug bracket. You'll slide it in over top of this lower face and bolt it in using 2 more of those 1/4-20 button heads. You can then get your plug connected back into the wire harness here, making sure to lock in that tab and then feed this into your mounting bracket. While you're down here, this is the perfect time to install these lower trim bezels. So these will use 1/4-20 button heads as well. You'll just line it up with the mounting holes. You can then reach in and install the nuts on the inside, and obviously the black button heads will go in from out here. Now these are not side specific, so to get your passenger and driver side, you just need to simply flip them around and we can then repeat that process over on the passenger side. At this point, you should just have the 2 remaining holes open here at the back of the bumper. That is just for accessing and removing the spare tire if you ever need it, and if you're retaining your factory spare underneath the truck. We do provide you plastic hole plugs to fill those, so you can go ahead and snap those in on both sides here. So if you're not relocating your license plate at this time out to an adventure carrier, you're going to need to install your license plate flip or pivot bracket down here. So you have the license plate mounting frame, you have a angle bracket that bolts onto the back here. You can then take the hinge and bolt it into the top of that bracket. This is all using 1/4-20 button head hardware. Now admittedly, we've already had this one mocked up on the truck one time to get everything fit up. So I know with ours, I'm gonna push this down tight at this point and just tighten the 2 mounting screws in here. These are slotted mounts, so just keep in mind that you may have to kind of assemble this and make some minor adjustments in here so that your license plate clears everything once fully installed. You can then take the entire assembled frame and bolt it on to the face of the bumper here. And actually this may be easier to access with this kind of pivoted up and out of your way.
This location is slotted as well, so you can kind of use that to both square this up and get it up or down as needed, making sure that the license plate's not hitting the lower face of the bumper here. And again, tighten that up. And from there, you'll just have 4 bolts to use to bolt your license plate into these outside corners. Now, those of you who are installing adventure carriers at this time, again, we're going to reference you to the adventure carrier installation video on the product page for that adventure carrier. Those of you who are not, we provide you black plastic caps that are going to go in these outside spindle tubes to kind of seal those off, as well as finish off the look up top here. We just recommend that when installing these, you put a light bead of RTV silicone around the outside here before popping them down in, just to keep any moisture, dust, dirt, debris, whatever it may be, out of those over time. With your plate installed, there's a couple things you want to keep in mind here, as well as possibly check clearances for. So this is going to flip up when you want to install a hitch receiver. There's obviously a bunch of different hitch receivers on the market, so pay attention to kind of this distance on yours. Make sure that your through hole for your pin will reach without the hitch actually contacting the bumper under here. So you may or may not have to pick up a different hitch depending on which one you already have. And then once you get this installed, you will always want to push this back down if you have any intention of opening the tailgate. I can tell you for sure in this orientation that opening the tailgate will cause the license plate to contact it and potentially damage your paint, and you don't want that. So with it down right here, you'll just want to very carefully open this up and check clearance to make sure you're good to go there. And then obviously with this all removed, everything pushed down here, you should have plenty of clearance, but it's always a good idea to check that as well. And that will pretty much complete this installation. Now, as always, if you guys have any questions at all about this bumper installation or anything else we offer here at Victory 4x4, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always send us an email at info@victory4x4.com or call us at 269-459-8447.